Hey folks, today I'm going to answer the question how long your backswing should be. It's a question that I get asked every once in a while, and when I look at a lot of the lessons that I give, oftentimes players have a misconception in terms of how long their backswing should be. Oftentimes they try to relate it to what they see with tour players, and I think there's a pretty easy checkpoint that we can look at in our backswing, the way that our body moves, that dictates how long our backswing should be. Because depending on the player, your backswing will vary in length from player to player. I'm going to tell you a few things to consider, and I'm also going to give you the biggest fault that happens in our backswing when players make too long of a backswing. So if you want to dive into it, let's get into it. How long should your backswing be? Something that I hear often when I ask that question is the overwhelming answer that I get is everyone tells me, well, coach, it's easy, right? My backswing should be so that my club is parallel to the ground at the top of the backswing. It's what we see on tour most often than not, and a lot of people have that as a checkpoint, as like almost a non-negotiable. And what I'm here to tell you is that that is not true. The way that we move in the backswing has a lot more to do with just the position that we try to put our hands in. The way our lower body moves, the way our upper body moves, the way our arms, the length of our arms, a lot of those things play a part. So the first thing that I want you to keep an open mind on is that for so many recreational golfers, getting to club parallel at the top of your backswing is too long. So now the question becomes, okay, coach, well, how long should my backswing be? When I look at backswings that get too long, one of the most common faults that I see in the golf swing that break down is there's two of them. Players will start to sway as their backswing gets too long. They really start to sway off the golf ball as they try to really finish that massive turn. And then another one that I see that is dangerous for our golf swing, but also dangerous for our body, is as they finish that backswing to try to get that length, they end up tilting towards the golf ball, and we get what's called reverse spine angle, where my spine is actually tilted in that direction, which again is super dangerous. So visually, we can look on video and we can look at a couple things. When I look at a player, and I can look at anyone's video from face on, and I can at least give them an opinion about length of backswing, because I'm just looking, are we maintaining our posture? Are there players that make a pretty good turn, but then as they get late in that backswing, as they really try to overdo it, they start to sway off the golf ball? And then I'm looking for that tilt. Everyone has a limit, and that limit is a combination of how much mobility and rotation we have in our hips, how much rotation we have in our upper body, and how much range of motion in our upper body, and then also how much range of motion we have in our shoulders. And a combination of those three equal an equation of how big of a backswing that you can make. If you're a player that has really tight hips and a really tight upper back and you don't turn very well, it doesn't matter how high you try to go, you're going to lose form. So that's something that we have to be aware of. Things that I'm looking for in the backswing is I'm looking for us to be able to make our maximum turn that our body will allow us without swaying too far off the golf ball. And what I mean by that is right now if I set up, and let's pretend I'm set up here and I have a line on each leg, I'm going to try to make sure that as I make my turn that I'm not swaying off of the golf ball. I'm trying to reach and turn to my limit without trying to overdo it and then going too far. Another thing that I'm looking for a lot of players is what our left arm looks like. I don't believe that you have to have a straight left arm. And I know a lot of people spend a lot of time thinking that they must maintain a straight left arm. But two golfers that come to mind, Jordan Spieth's lead arm is not straight at the top of his backswing, and Padraig Harrington's lead arm is not straight at the top of his backswing. But there is also a difference between a straight arm, maybe what we see those guys do, and what I see happen too often when players start to overdo it and they really extend themselves and that lead arm really breaks down. So a visual that I'm looking for is I'm trying to keep, and I want players to keep their hands as far away from their head as possible as they make their backswing. So if we have a player that their arms start to break down, their backswing starts to get too long, right, they start to lift and their arms start to break down. What we see towards the end of the swing is the hands start to get closer to their head. Instead of the right way of doing it is that we have a player that's going to come in. They're going to try to keep their hands as far away from their head as possible as they maintain their posture and maintain their turn. And a lot of times what players are going to do is they're going to look and they're going to say, wow, my hands are a lot lower than they normally are. If we try to overextend or try to reach to a position we can't get to, we're going to break down our posture. It's a backswing that ends up being very long. And then the tricky part about a backswing that is too long, if I have a player that does one or two of the major faults that I see, they sway off the golf ball or they start to tilt towards the golf ball. Now in the downswing, they have to undo these things, right? And then when they have to start to undo them, their sequencing is completely out of whack. So to summarize so far, right, number one issue I see with backswings is backswings get way too long. So things that we want to check is when you're watching yourself on video, how long of a backswing can I make before my lead arm starts to break down far too much or before I start to sway off the golf ball. Another thing that we can do, and it's pretty easy to do if you take your smartphone and you record yourself in slow motion. Another issue I see with backswings that get too long is the very last portion of the golf swing, the player's just simply lifting their arms and they're not really turning their body. And if I was to record in slow motion, I actually had a player in here 2 nights ago where we had their video in slow motion. What we saw, he started his backswing, everything looked good. The body was turning, then right around here, his body had kind of reached its limit, and then he kept lifting his arms, and then once he kept lifting his arms, he started to tilt in that direction. And I went to that player, and I stopped him in the backswing where his body stopped turning, right before his arms started lifting. And I said, what do you think about this position? And based on his preconceived notion, he said, that backswing's way too short. And I joked with him, I said, right now what we're looking at, I said, this backswing for you is very good. He's 9 to 5, he spends all day sitting down. And yes, to him, he saw this and said, well, I should definitely be up here. Why am I here? That's when his body stopped rotating. He hadn't swayed off the golf ball. He didn't tilt towards the target. He was in a good spot there. Everything he did after that was starting to make it worse. That's when he started to lift the arms, tried to extend that swing, and then from there we had a very inconsistent downswing. I often hear players tell me that they want a consistent golf swing, right? Well, there's some key things we have to consistently do. In a previous video last week, I talked about let's consistently set up our practice the same way. When we talk about our backswing, we should be doing our best to make sure that we are consistently stopping where our body maxes out, right? Where do we hit that limit in terms of upper and lower body rotation, and where the arms fall as a result. Stop obsessing with trying to get to that club parallel at the top. The last thing I'm going to touch on is some people will counter me because they'll come back and say, well, okay, I'm going to make a shorter backswing, but that definitely means I'm going to swing it slower. Almost every player that overswings or that overdoes it in their backswing has a downswing sequence that is led with their arms in their hands. And early on, a player is going to make a shorter backswing, and there's a chance that they see a small drop off in club head speed. It's unlikely that they're going to see a plummet 15 miles an hour. It might be a few miles an hour. But the thing I'll tell that person is, yes, the club might slow down, right, because we have less hand path to travel. But if you're a player that is in this position here, I know that most of the time your arms are dominating your downswing, your sequence is off, and you're not using your lower body effectively. And I'm guessing that with most of you, if we reduce the length of your backswing to hit our limit, and we start to train our transition move to lead with our lower body, I bet most of you, we can end up moving the golf club faster than we did when we had a long backswing. But the first thing that we have to do is find our limit and gain our control of where that backswing should end. So now you've recorded the video, right? You've identified, okay, I know for me, because I've watched what Ryan has told me, right? I fall in the trap if I start to do this, and I've realized that my swing needs to stop wherever it is, somewhere here. How do I train that? The example I like to use is I like to look at where our hands would stop if it was a clock. So what time is it? Right? Well, for some of you that have very limited mobility in your shoulders, right? You might only get to 9 o'clock, and after that, you really start to overdo it. So you might be 9 o'clock, you might be 10 o'clock, you might be 11 o'clock. One of the easiest things you can do is you can put your phone on selfie mode and on a tripod, whatever it may be, and you can just start by making dry swings with no golf ball, looking into that camera, just getting to the top of the position, that's my limit, and then making a downswing from there. This process will take a little bit of time, but for so many of you, the length of the backswing is the root cause of your downswing problems. Another thing that you can do is, let's say you're in your basement or you hit balls in your garage or whatever it may be. If you have a mirror, it can be a big mirror, it can be a full-length mirror. They're relatively inexpensive. Where you can set up in a mirror, so now you're able to make a bunch of swings where you're going to get some eyes on it, where you're going to make your backswing, right? You're watching your mirror, you get into your spot, right? And then you're really starting to use your eyes to start to lock in, okay, that's my limit, right? And then we progress to making some down swings, and then we progress to making some full speed swings. For some of you, this may take some time, but as I wrap up this video, if you're struggling with your downswing, if you're unhappy with your ball flight, before we find out what's wrong with the downswing, we've got to make sure that the length of our backswing is not causing problems. And for so many of you that are telling me that you want to have forward shaft lean, right? You want to have the golf club behind you. You want to compress the golf ball. We have all these things we want to do in the downswing. We usually can't do it from this position. So that's what we have to get rid of. So how long should our backswing be? We find out how far our upper and lower body can rotate. And then from there, we see how close we can get to maintaining a relatively straight lead arm. The last drill I'll leave you with, one thing that we can do is you can get set up and you can put a club across your shoulders. And now we're just going to make a backswing. Okay, for some of you, you can get to 90 degrees. Some of you super hyper mobile people might get more than that. I had to sway to get more than that because I only get to about 90. And then now from here, I've made a turn, right? I've hit my limit. I feel some tension in my left side. I feel some tension in my left rib cage. And then now from here, I'm just going to extend out. And for me, I probably see that club hanging around 11 o'clock or so, which for me is my limit. So that's another way that you can check before we even introduce the golf club. I hope that this clarified this concept for you. If you have any questions, please post them down below. Overdoing your backswing length can hurt your golf swing, can also hurt your body. Let's find out what the limit of your backswing length is, and let's start to build a backswing that stops there so we can build a downswing the way that we want. All right, folks, thanks for watching. Have a great day.